I'm Emma, 29 female. I live in a small but vibrant city, in a modest apartment above a bakery that always smells like heaven. For the past decade, my life has been a blur of 16-hour days in other people's kitchens, saving every spare dollar for a dream that felt both impossibly large and absolutely necessary. That dream was the Gilded Spoon, my very own restaurant. It was supposed to be the night my family finally saw me, not as the quiet younger sister, but as someone who built something from nothing. Instead, it became the night they showed me exactly where I stood. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The air in the Gilded Spoon hummed with a nervous energy that felt electric. Every surface gleamed under the soft, ambient lighting I'd spent weeks perfecting. The scent of rosemary, slow-braised beef, and fresh bread hung in the air, a perfume I had personally composed. My best friend and restaurant manager, Georgia, was a whirlwind of efficiency, her clipboard a weapon against chaos as she directed the newly trained waitstaff. We had been planning this night, the grand opening, for over a year. It wasn't just about launching a business. It was the culmination of a promise I made to myself when I was a teenager, washing dishes in a greasy diner. I had poured my entire life savings into this place. I took out loans that made my hands sweat whenever I thought about them. My apartment was sparsely furnished because every penny went into the custom-made oak tables, the high-end kitchen equipment, and the locally sourced ceramic plates. Everything had to be perfect. The guest list was a mix of local food critics, influencers Georgia had schmoozed for weeks, friends, and business contacts. Every table was booked, except for one. Table 7, the best seat in the house, a cozy circular booth with a perfect view of the entire dining room and the open kitchen, was reserved. A simple, elegant card on the table read, "Reserved for family." It was for my mother, Mabel, my older brother, Frederick, his wife, and a few aunts and uncles. 10 seats in total. I'd spoken to my mom just that morning. "We're all so proud of you, sweetie," she chirped. "We wouldn't miss it for the world. Frederick is even moving his weekly poker game to celebrate you." Her words were a balm on my frayed nerves. For once, my ambitious, successful older brother was making a concession for me. Frederick, the wealth manager, the golden child, the one who always had our parents' rapt attention, was supposedly putting his little sister first. It felt like a monumental shift in our family's dynamics. He'd always treated my culinary ambitions as a cute hobby. When I secured the loan for the restaurant, he'd condescendingly offered to look over the numbers, implying I was in over my head. To hear he was rescheduling his sacred poker night, a high-stakes game with his wealthy clients, felt like a genuine olive branch. As the first guests arrived, a wave of adrenaline washed over me. The dining room began to fill, the low hum of conversation growing into a lively buzz. I was in the kitchen, a conductor leading an orchestra of sizzling pans and chopping knives. I personally inspected every plate before it left the pass. The seared scallops with lemon butter sauce, the duck confit with cherry reduction, the handmade pasta, each dish was a piece of my soul. Georgia would occasionally pop her head in, her eyes shining. "They love it, Emma. The critic from the City Ledger is raving about the risotto." Each report was a small victory, but my eyes kept darting to the clock on the wall and through the pass to table 7. It remained starkly, painfully empty. 7:00 p.m. their reservation time came and went. At 7:30 I started to worry. I imagined traffic, a last-minute wardrobe crisis, the kind of trivial delays that happen. I sent my mom a quick text. "Hey, hope everything's okay." "Your table is waiting?" No reply. At 8:00 p.m., the worry curdled into a familiar, sinking feeling of dread. The rest of the restaurant was a resounding success. Laughter and compliments filled the space, but all I could see was that vacant booth. It was a black hole in the middle of my triumph, sucking all the joy out of the room. Georgia noticed my distraction. She came over, placing a gentle hand on my arm. "Don't worry about them," she said softly, her gaze flicking towards the empty table. "They'll show up, and if they don't, it's their loss. Look around, Emma, you did this, it's incredible." I tried to take her words to heart. I tried to focus on the smiling faces of the other guests, on the clean plates coming back to the kitchen, on the tangible proof of my success surrounding me. But the validation I craved most, the one I had worked my entire life to earn, was absent. It felt like running a marathon and crossing the finish line to find no one there waiting for you. By 9:00 p.m., I knew they weren't coming. The initial hurt had hardened into a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. I stopped checking my phone, which remained silent. No calls, no texts, not a single word of explanation. They hadn't just been delayed, they had chosen not to come. The knowledge was so sharp, it felt like a physical blow. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I smiled at guests, accepted their compliments with a voice that felt detached from my body, and posed for pictures, but my mind was elsewhere. I was replaying every conversation, every promise, searching for a clue I had missed. Had I misunderstood? Had something terrible happened? But a darker, more cynical part of me knew the truth was likely far simpler and far more hurtful. The final guests left around 11:00 p.m., their faces glowing with satisfaction. The staff began the methodical process of cleaning up, the clatter of plates and silverware echoing in the now quiet room. Georgia gave me a sympathetic look as she cashed out the last table. "I'm so sorry, Em," she whispered. I just nodded, unable to form words. The night was a massive success by every professional metric. We had exceeded our sales projections, received glowing feedback, and secured a follow-up review from the city's most influential food blogger. But as I stood in the middle of my beautiful, empty restaurant, all I could feel was the profound loneliness of that one empty table. It was a monument to my family's indifference. The cleanup crew worked with quiet efficiency, their movements a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I walked through the dining room, my shoes clicking softly on the polished hardwood floors. I ran my hand over the back of one of the chairs at table 7, the upholstery still cool and untouched. 10 empty place settings. 10 napkins, still perfectly folded. 10 wine glasses, gleaming and unused. It was a perfectly preserved scene of abandonment. Georgia, ever the pragmatist, had already started on the end-of-day accounting in the small office. "Don't stay too late," she called out. "Go home, get some sleep. Tomorrow we celebrate properly, just us." I appreciated her effort to shield me, but sleep felt a million miles away. I told her I would lock up and sent the rest of the weary but happy staff home, pressing a generous cash tip into each of their hands from my own pocket. They deserved it. They had shown up for me. Alone in the silence, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of the night's disappointment. It wasn't just disappointment, it was a profound and aching humiliation. I had made myself vulnerable. I had reserved the best table, told my staff with pride, "This is for my family." Now, their absence felt like a public judgment, a silent declaration that my dream wasn't worth their time. I pulled out my phone again, my thumb hovering over my mom's contact. Still nothing. No missed calls, no texts. I switched to my brother, Frederick. His social media was, as always, meticulously curated. I scrolled through his feed, not sure what I was looking for, and then I saw it. It wasn't on his page, but on his wife's. A story posted just an hour ago. The video was shaky, filled with loud laughter and the clinking of glasses. The camera panned across a room thick with cigar smoke. In the center of it all was my brother, Frederick, leaning back in his chair with a smug grin, a massive pile of poker chips stacked in front of him. The caption was a string of celebratory emojis and the words, "He did it again, king of the table, crown." The air left my lungs in a painful rush. The background was unmistakable. It was Frederick's home office, the one with the mahogany desk and the ridiculously expensive leather chairs. And it wasn't just him. I could see my uncle in the background, laughing loudly. My aunt was there too, holding a glass of wine and watching the game. My mother, Mabel, was visible for a fleeting second, beaming with pride as she placed a plate of appetizers on the table. They were all there. Every single person who was supposed to be at my restaurant at my grand opening was at my brother's rescheduled poker night. He hadn't rescheduled it at all. He had simply chosen it over me, and the rest of them, my entire family, had followed suit. The lie my mother had told me that morning, "We wouldn't miss it for the world," echoed in my head, mocking me. It was so brazen, so effortlessly cruel. They didn't even have the decency to come up with a believable excuse. They just didn't care if I found out, or maybe they assumed I wouldn't. After all, I was just Emma, the little sister, the one who was always on the periphery of their lives. A cold, clarifying anger began to replace the hurt. This wasn't a simple mistake or a miscommunication. This was a deliberate choice. Frederick couldn't stand the thought of me having a single night that was about my success, not his. He had to be the center of attention, the king of the table. He had to win, even if the competition was his own sister's lifelong dream. And my mother, who preached about family above all else, had enabled him. She had lied to my face and then smiled for the camera at his victory party, while my own celebration was tainted by their absence. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to smash something. I wanted to throw one of the beautiful ceramic plates against the wall and watch it shatter into 1,000 pieces, just like my illusions about my family. But I didn't. I just stood there, phone in hand, the silent video playing on a loop, each frame a fresh stab of betrayal. My dream restaurant, the symbol of my independence and hard work, suddenly felt like a monument to my own foolishness. I had saved a seat at the table for people who had never truly made room for me in their lives. I methodically began the lock-up procedure, my movements mechanical. I checked the gas lines in the kitchen, powered down the ovens, and locked the walk-in freezer. Each click of a switch, each turn of a key felt final. I was shutting down more than just the restaurant for the night. I was shutting down a part of myself, the part that kept hoping, that kept extending invitations, that kept believing one day they would finally see me. As I walked to the front door, my gaze fell on the reservation book Georgia had left on the host's stand. It was open to today's date, every line filled except for the bold entry at 7:00 p.m., Family Table 7. I picked up a pen and drew a single, decisive line through the word. It was a small act, but it felt significant, a boundary being drawn, a chapter ending. The hurt was still there, a raw, open wound. But beneath it, something new was taking root, resolve. They had made their choice. Now I had to make mine. The night had been a painful lesson, but perhaps a necessary one. I had been looking for approval in the wrong place. My success didn't depend on their applause, and my worth wasn't determined by their attendance. It was time I finally started to believe that. After drawing the line through my family's reservation, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The emotional storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie, quiet clarity. I finished the final checks, my mind numb. The front door was the last step. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. The street was deserted, the city settling into a late-night slumber. As I turned the key in the lock, the heavy deadbolt sliding into place with a definitive thud, a voice startled me. "Excuse me, are you the owner?" I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. A man was standing a few feet away, partially obscured by the shadows of a nearby oak tree. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, with silvering hair at his temples. He didn't look threatening, but the unexpectedness of his presence set me on edge. I replied, my voice more steady than I felt. I clutched my keys tightly in my hand. "Can I help you? We're closed." The man stepped forward into the light from the street lamp, a polite, almost apologetic smile on his face. He looked to be in his late 40s, with kind, intelligent eyes. He extended a hand. "My name is Stanley Vance. I'm sorry to bother you so late. I was hoping to catch you. My associates and I had dinner here tonight." He gestured vaguely back towards the restaurant. We were at the table by the window. I vaguely recalled the table, a group of 4, all in business attire, who had ordered several courses and spoken in low, serious tones all evening. I had assumed they were from a nearby corporate office. "I hope you enjoyed your meal," I said, the standard, automatic response of a restaurant owner. "Enjoyed is an understatement," he said, his smile widening. I'm sorry, I don't know your name." "Emma," I said. "Emma, my team and I were incredibly impressed. Not just with the food, which was exceptional, but with the entire operation. The service was seamless, the ambience is perfect. It's a well-oiled machine, and on opening night, that's practically unheard of." His praise was a welcome antidote to the poison of my family's rejection. A small, genuine smile touched my lips for the first time in hours. "Thank you, Mr. Vance. That means a lot. My team worked very hard." "It shows," he affirmed, his gaze serious now. "I'm a venture capitalist. My firm, Vance Capital, specializes in identifying and investing in promising new businesses in the hospitality sector. We spend our evenings dining at new establishments, looking for that spark of brilliance. Tonight, we found it." My mind was struggling to keep up. Venture capitalist? Investing? It felt like I had stepped into an alternate reality. Just moments ago, I was reeling from a deep personal betrayal, and now this man was talking about my restaurant in a way I had only dreamed of. "You have something special here, Emma," he continued, his voice resonating with conviction. "A strong concept, flawless execution, and a clear passion that comes through in every dish. The only thing holding you back from what I can see is scale." "Scale?" I echoed, confused. "You have a single location," he explained patiently. "A very successful one, I have no doubt. But a concept this strong deserves a broader audience. I'm talking about a second location in a prime downtown spot. Maybe a third in the suburbs. A catering arm. The potential is enormous." He was speaking a language of business expansion that I hadn't even allowed myself to consider. My focus had been so squarely on just surviving the first month, the first year. He must have seen the disbelief on my face because he chuckled softly. "I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me be direct. We want to invest. We want to partner with you to help the Gilded Spoon grow into the brand it's destined to become." He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a sleek, minimalist business card. "We'd like to offer you a preliminary investment of 6 figures to streamline your operations and begin scouting for a second location. This isn't a loan. This is a partnership. We provide the capital and the business expertise, you provide the culinary genius." He held the card out to me. My hand was trembling slightly as I took it. The card was heavy, the lettering embossed. Stanley Vance, Managing Partner, Vance Capital. I stared at it, the words seeming to shimmer under the streetlight. 6 figures. The number was so large it felt unreal. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life. It was freedom from the crushing weight of my loans. It was the kind of validation that couldn't be faked or rescinded. It was purely professional, based on merit, on the thing I had built with my own 2 hands. I looked up from the card and met his gaze. "You're serious?" "Completely," he said, his expression unwavering. "My assistant will call you tomorrow to set up a meeting if you're interested. We can go over the details, our projections, and answer any questions you have. No pressure at all, but I sincerely hope you'll consider it. Talent like yours is rare." He gave me a final, encouraging nod. "Have a good night, Emma, and congratulations on a spectacular opening." And with that, he turned and walked down the street, disappearing into the darkness, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, clutching a small piece of cardboard that had just changed my life. I stood there for a long time, the cool night air raising goosebumps on my arms. The universe had a strange, almost cruel sense of humor. On the very night my family had made me feel worthless, a complete stranger had seen my value and put a number on it, a very, very big number. The emotional whiplash was staggering. I unlocked the restaurant door, went back inside, and sat down in the dark, silent dining room. I looked at the empty table 7, and then I looked at the business card in my hand. One represented a past I couldn't change, a history of being overlooked and undervalued. The other represented a future I had never dared to imagine. As I finally locked up for the second time and started the short walk home, my phone, which had been silent all night, began to buzz. And then it buzzed again, and again. I pulled it out of my pocket. The screen was lit up with incoming calls, one after another, all from the same person, Mom. The missed call counter began to climb. 1, 2, 10, 27. The next day, it would show 89. But for now, I just watched her name flash on the screen, a frantic, belated plea for my attention. I silenced the phone and put it back in my pocket. Tonight was not about them. Tonight was about me. I woke up the next morning to the smell of baking bread from the downstairs bakery and the blinding glare of sunlight streaming through my window. For a moment, I felt a disorienting sense of peace before the events of the previous night came rushing back in a tidal wave of conflicting emotions. The cavernous emptiness of table 7. The smug look on my brother's face in that video. The weight of Stanley Vance's business card, which was now sitting on my nightstand, looking impossibly real in the morning light. And then there was my phone. I picked it up. 89 missed calls from my mother, Mabel, 17 from my brother, Frederick, a handful from various aunts, and a flood of text messages. I opened my mom's first. The messages were a frantic progression of emotions. The first few, from around 11:30 p.m. last night, were simple. "Emma, call me." "Sweetie, where are you?" Then they grew more demanding. "Emma, this isn't funny, pick up the phone." "We're worried sick." The ones from the early morning were tinged with anger. "I can't believe you're ignoring your mother. After everything we do for you, this is the respect we get." My brother's texts were more direct and frankly insulting. "Heard you had a little party. Too busy to talk to your family?" Followed by, "Mom is hysterical. What's your problem? Call her." There was not a single "sorry we missed it." Not a word of explanation. They had flipped the script entirely, casting me as the villain who was maliciously ignoring them and causing them distress. The audacity was breathtaking. It was a classic move from their playbook, one they had used my entire life. Create a problem and then blame me for my reaction to it. My hands were shaking with a rage so potent it felt like I could spit fire. I ignored the texts and opened my social media again. The king of the table post from Frederick's wife was still there. But now, there were more pictures from the evening, posted by others who were there. One photo, in particular, made my blood run cold. It was a group shot. My whole family, crammed together in Frederick's office, grinning for the camera. And in the center of it all was Frederick, holding up a bottle of champagne, a very specific, very expensive brand. It was the same brand I had told my mother, weeks ago, that I was saving for a special family toast at my opening. I had described the bottle, telling her how I'd splurged on it to mark the occasion. Her response at the time had been, "Oh, that's lovely, dear." And there it was, in his hand, at his poker night. But the most damning piece of evidence came from a comment under the photo. It was from one of Frederick's clients, a man I didn't know. The comment read, "Incredible night, Rick. Cleaning up at the poker table and closing the Henderson deal all in one go. You're a legend." The Henderson deal. The name rang a faint bell. I remembered Frederick complaining weeks ago about a high-value client, Henderson, who was getting cold feet about a major investment. He had been stressed, worried he was going to lose a massive commission. Closing that deal would have been a huge win for him, and it all clicked into place. The poker night wasn't just a poker night. It was a business meeting disguised as a social event. Frederick needed to impress his clients, especially Henderson. He needed to project an aura of effortless success and confidence. What better way to do that than to host a high-stakes game where he was the master of his domain, surrounded by his adoring family, popping expensive champagne? My grand opening was on the same night. He couldn't be in two places at once, so he made a choice. He weighed my cute hobby against his massive commission, and the decision was obvious. But he didn't just choose his event over mine. He actively sabotaged mine. He stole the celebratory narrative. He lied, or had our mother lie for him, about rescheduling. He co-opted the special champagne. He ensured the entire family was there to serve as his audience, his props in the theater of his success. He hadn't just forgotten about me or been thoughtless. He had actively and maliciously worked to ensure his night would eclipse mine. He needed to be the only star in the family's sky, and he had snuffed out my little light to make sure his shone brighter. The hurt I felt yesterday was nothing compared to this cold, hard certainty. This was a calculated act of sabotage born from pure, unadulterated jealousy. He couldn't stand that I had built something on my own without his help or his money. He couldn't stand the thought of me receiving praise and attention from the family. So he engineered a situation where he was guaranteed to be the hero. The pain of it was so intense it was almost clarifying. There were no more gray areas. There was no room for excuses or misunderstandings. This was the truth of my relationship with my family. I was not a priority. I was an afterthought when convenient, and an obstacle. When I wasn't. Just then my phone started ringing again. It was Mabel. I stared at her name on the screen, the sound shrill in the quiet of my apartment. All the years of biting my tongue, of swallowing my disappointment, of making myself smaller to keep the peace, rose up in my throat. I silenced the call and sent a single, simple text message back to her. It wasn't angry or accusatory. It was just a statement of fact. I know you were all at Frederick's poker game last night. I saw the pictures. I didn't need to say more. The ball was in her court now. Let them squirm. Let them try to spin this. As I set my phone down, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The desperate need for their approval, the thing that had driven me for so long, was gone. It had been burned away by the bitter truth. I picked up Stanley Vance's business card. This was my new focus. This was my future, a future they would have no part in. The reply from my mother came almost instantly, a frantic series of bubbles as she typed, deleted, and retyped. The eventual message was a masterpiece of deflection and guilt. "Oh, sweetie, it wasn't like that at all. Frederick had a very important client in town. It was a last-minute thing for his work. He felt terrible about it. We were going to come right after, but it went so late. You know how important his career is. We were celebrating you in spirit." Celebrating me in spirit. While drinking my champagne at a party designed to overshadow my own. The excuse was so flimsy, so insulting to my intelligence that I almost laughed. They didn't even have the decency to craft a believable lie. It was clear they thought I was the same old Emma, the one who would accept any crumb of an excuse just to keep the peace. Before I could even formulate a response, another message came through. "Your brother is very upset that you're not answering. He said you're being dramatic. You need to call him and clear the air." That was the final straw. I was being dramatic. I, the one who had been lied to, ignored, and publicly humiliated, was the one who needed to clear the air. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a deep breath, stood up, and made coffee. As the rich aroma filled my small apartment, I focused on the tangible. I focused on the business card sitting on my counter. I thought about Stanley Vance's words, "Talent like yours is rare." While my family was busy calling me dramatic, a complete stranger had called me talented. The contrast was stark and illuminating. I spent the next hour doing what I did best. I made a plan. I created a list. On one side, I wrote family. Beneath it, I listed all the things I had been giving them: my time, my energy, my hope, my emotional availability, my forgiveness. On the other side, I wrote the Gilded Spoon and Vance Capital. Beneath that, I listed what this new opportunity offered: respect, validation, financial freedom, growth, a future I could control. Looking at the two lists, the choice was so blindingly obvious it was almost painful to have not seen it sooner. I had been pouring water into a bucket full of holes, wondering why it was always empty. My phone continued to buzz intermittently with texts from Mabel and Frederick, a pestering, annoying noise from a world I was already leaving behind. I put it on silent and placed it face down on the counter. Then, I picked it up for one specific purpose. I called the number on Stanley Vance's business card. A polite, professional assistant answered. "Vance Capital, how may I direct your call?" "Hello," I said, my voice clear and steady. "My name is Emma. Mr. Vance gave me his card last night. I'd like to schedule a meeting with him." If the assistant was surprised to hear from me so soon, she didn't show it. "Of course, Ms. Emma, Mr. Vance had hoped you would call. He's cleared his schedule this afternoon. Would 2:00 p.m. at our downtown office work for you?" It was happening. It was real. "Yes," I said, a thrill running through me. 2:00 p.m. is perfect. After hanging up, I felt a surge of purpose I hadn't felt in years. This was bigger than just revenge. This wasn't about hurting them back. This was about building a life so full, so successful, and so happy that their opinions simply ceased to matter. Their toxic world would become a distant speck in my rearview mirror. I spent the rest of the morning preparing. I went to the restaurant where Georgia was already overseeing the prep for the dinner service. She saw the look on my face and knew instantly that something had shifted. I told her everything: the poker night, the champagne, the Henderson deal, and finally the offer from Vance Capital. Her jaw dropped. "Emma, this is huge," she exclaimed, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "You deserve this more than anyone I know." Her unwavering support was a lifeline. "I need your help," I said, pulling back. "I'm meeting him at 2. I need numbers, projections, supplier costs, everything." For the next few hours, we were a whirlwind of activity. We pored over spreadsheets, printed reports, and organized a sleek, professional portfolio. We outlined a 5-year growth plan, identified potential neighborhoods for a second location, and brainstormed ideas for a streamlined catering service. By the time I left for the meeting, I was armed not just with passion, but with data. I was no longer just a chef. I was a businesswoman about to negotiate the future of her company. As I walked into the stunning, glass-walled offices of Vance Capital, I felt a powerful sense of self-assurance. I was in control. My family's drama, their desperate texts and calls, felt like static from a broken radio. I had tuned into a new frequency. The meeting with Stanley was even better than I could have hoped. He wasn't just offering money, he was offering mentorship. He and his team had already run preliminary analytics based on their dinner experience and public data. They presented me with charts and graphs that quantified my success in the cold, hard language of business. They saw my potential, not as a fluke, but as a scalable model. We talked for 2 hours. I laid out my vision, and they laid out their strategy for achieving it. When I walked out of that office, we had a handshake deal and a follow-up meeting with the lawyers scheduled for the end of the week. I was on the verge of becoming the CEO of my own burgeoning culinary empire. As I stepped out onto the busy downtown street, the city buzzing with life around me, I pulled out my phone. It was littered with more missed calls and increasingly desperate texts from my mother, culminating in one that read, "I'm coming over to your apartment. We need to talk about this." I looked at the message, and for the first time I didn't feel anger or hurt. I felt nothing but a distant pity. They had no idea that while they were trying to drag me back into their petty drama, I had been busy building a new world for myself, a world where they didn't even have a key. I typed a short, simple reply. "I'm not home. I'm busy." Then I put the phone away and hailed a cab back to my restaurant, back to my future. The week that followed was the most intense and exhilarating of my life. My days were a blur of meetings with lawyers, accountants, and marketing consultants from Vance Capital. My nights were spent at the Gilded Spoon, refining menus and ensuring the standard of excellence that had earned me this opportunity never wavered. The restaurant was thriving. Word of mouth from opening night had spread like wildfire, and we were fully booked every single evening. Georgia was a rock star, handling the front of house with grace and authority, allowing me to focus on the bigger picture. Throughout this period, my family's attempts to contact me became more and more frantic. My mother, Mabel, escalated from texts to long, rambling voicemails that swung wildly between tearful apologies and angry accusations. "I don't understand why you're doing this to me, Emma," she'd cry in one message. "We've always been so close." In the next, her tone would be sharp. "Your brother is the one who puts food on our table. His career supports all of us, you know. You should be more grateful." Frederick's approach was less emotional and more condescending. He sent me a formal-sounding email with the subject line "misunderstanding." In it, he explained, as if to a child, the complexities of his work and how networking with high-value clients was essential. He offered a sincere apology for any hurt feelings and suggested he could make it up to me by bringing his clients to my restaurant, promising it would be great exposure for me. He was offering to do me a favor, as if his presence was a gift I should be thankful for. I deleted the email without a reply. The silence drove them crazy. It was a language they didn't understand. In our family, every conflict was a loud, dramatic storm, followed by a forced, rug-sweeping reconciliation where I was usually the one to apologize. My refusal to engage, to even acknowledge their existence, was a power move they had no defense against. They didn't know about Stanley Vance or the six-figure deal that was being finalized. They just knew that for the first time in my life, I wasn't playing my assigned role. The news broke on a Friday. Stanley's firm sent out a press release, which was immediately picked up by the city's business journal and major food blogs. Vance Capital makes six-figure investment in breakout restaurant, The Gilded Spoon. The article featured a professional headshot of me they'd taken earlier in the week and quotes from Stanley praising my vision and culinary artistry. It detailed our ambitious plans for expansion, including a new flagship location downtown. The story was everywhere. My phone, which had been buzzing with my family's drama, now exploded for a completely different reason. Congratulatory messages poured in from friends, old culinary school classmates, and former colleagues. It was overwhelming and incredibly affirming. And then, about an hour after the news went public, the call I knew was coming finally arrived. It was Frederick. I let it ring for a moment, then took a deep breath and answered, putting the phone on speaker. Georgia was in the office with me, and I gave her a look. She nodded, understanding I needed a witness. "Emma, finally," he said, his voice tight with an emotion I couldn't quite place. It wasn't happiness. "I just saw the news." "I've been busy," I said calmly, my voice devoid of emotion. "Busy? You signed a deal like that and you didn't tell your family?" he demanded, the accusation clear. "You didn't think to run it by me? I could have looked over the contract, made sure you weren't getting taken for a ride." The sheer arrogance of it was stunning. He believed even now that I needed his guidance, his approval. "I had a team of excellent lawyers for that, Frederick. Thank you for the offer, though." "A team of lawyers," he scoffed. "Right. Listen, Emma, this is great, it's really great, good for you." The praise sounded like it was being dragged from him over broken glass. "Mom is thrilled, we're all so proud." "Are you?" I asked, my voice still quiet. "Because last week you were at a poker game and Mom was lying to me about it." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Okay, look, we already talked about this. It was a misunderstanding," he said impatiently. "Let's move past it. What's important now is the future. This is a huge opportunity, not just for you, but for the whole family." And then came the request, the real reason for his call. "I've been thinking," he started, his voice shifting to a conspiratorial, businesslike tone. "This investor, Vance, he put in 6 figures, right? That's just the start. To really make this thing fly, you're going to need more capital down the line. And you're going to need someone you can trust managing the financial side of things. Someone who has your best interests at heart." I knew where this was going, but I let him continue, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. He said, as if presenting a brilliant, magnanimous gift. "You should bring me on as your financial advisor. Better yet, a partner. I can manage the investment portfolio, handle the business accounts, deal with the investors. You can focus on the creative side, and I'll handle the numbers. It's a perfect partnership. Family looking out for family." Georgia's eyes went wide. She put her hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. He wanted in. After actively sabotaging me, after showing nothing but contempt for my ambition, now that there was money and success on the table, he wanted to claim a piece of it. He wanted to ride my coattails all the way to the bank. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice dangerously soft. "You stood me up, you lied about it, you belittled my dream, and now you want me to hire you. You want a piece of the company you couldn't even be bothered to show up for." "Don't be so dramatic, Emma," he snapped, his charming facade cracking. "This isn't about the grand opening. This is business. I'm your brother. Who else are you going to trust with this kind of money? Some stranger?" The question hung in the air, thick with irony. "Yes," I said, the word sharp and final. "I think I'll trust the stranger. The one who saw my value from the beginning, not the one who only showed up after the press release. The Gilded Spoon is not a family business, Frederick. And it never will be." I could hear his sharp intake of breath, the sputtering outrage, but I didn't wait to hear it. I ended the call. A profound silence filled the office. Georgia looked at me, her expression a mixture of shock and awe. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile, not yet, but it was a smile of liberation. The final chain had been broken. He had made his unforgivable request, and I had given him my unforgivable answer. The confrontation with Frederick was a turning point. It was as if by saying no to him, I had finally and fully said yes to myself. The fallout was immediate and predictable. Mabel called me, sobbing, accusing me of tearing the family apart and being cruel to my brother who was only trying to help. I didn't engage. I just said, "Mom, I'm not going to discuss my business with you anymore. I love you, but this conversation is over." Then I stopped taking their calls altogether. I blocked Frederick's number. I needed space to build my new life, and their noise was a distraction I could no longer afford. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. With Vance Capital's backing, everything accelerated. We hired a top marketing firm to rebrand the Gilded Spoon, not just as a restaurant, but as a luxury culinary experience. We secured the lease on a stunning downtown location, 3 times the size of the original, with a rooftop terrace overlooking the city. We began building a state-of-the-art kitchen and designing a dining room that was the epitome of elegance. I was no longer just a chef. I was a CEO. My days were filled with construction site visits, vendor negotiations, staff interviews, and strategic planning sessions with Stanley and his team. Stanley became a true mentor, teaching me the intricacies of finance, marketing, and corporate governance. He respected my creative vision implicitly, always deferring to me on matters of food and ambience, but he also empowered me with the business knowledge I needed to lead. Georgia, my rock, was promoted to Chief Operating Officer, and I gave her a small stake in the company. Seeing the pride on her face when she signed the papers was one of the happiest moments of the entire journey. We were a team, building our empire together. The original Gilded Spoon continued to be a massive success, so much so that reservations had to be made months in advance. It became the foundation, our beloved flagship that reminded us of where we started. Of course, my family heard about all of it. In a city our size, news travels fast. They saw the articles in magazines, the interviews I did for local television, the buzz on social media about the new downtown location. From what I heard through the grapevine, their reaction was a sour mix of jealousy and bewilderment. They couldn't comprehend how I, the quiet, overlooked daughter, had achieved this level of success without them, and especially without Frederick's guidance. They had written me out of their narrative of success, and now my story was bigger than theirs had ever been. The grand opening of the new downtown restaurant was a major city event. We hosted a gala for investors, media, and the city's elite. Unlike my first opening, this one was flawless. There were no empty tables, no sinking feelings of dread. The room was filled with the sound of genuine excitement and support. As I stood on a small stage to thank everyone, I looked out at the sea of smiling faces. Stanley was at a front table, beaming like a proud father. Georgia was by the bar, eyesing a glass to me, her eyes shining with tears of joy. These people, my team, my partners, my friends, this was my family now. The family I had chosen and who had chosen me back. A few weeks after the new location opened, I received a letter. It was handwritten on my mother's familiar stationery. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. It was a long, rambling letter, full of justifications for their past behavior and pleas for reconciliation. But one paragraph stood out. "Frederick's business has been struggling lately," she wrote. "He lost the Henderson account and a few others. He feels there's a perception in the community that he is not a good family man, which is hurting his reputation. It would mean the world to us if we could all have dinner together at your new restaurant, a public show of support. We could post a picture, show everyone that we are a close, supportive family." I read the words again, and a slow, cold anger washed over me. Even now, after everything, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about making amends. It was about using my success to salvage his failing reputation. They didn't want a relationship, they wanted a photo op. They wanted to bask in the glow of my hard-won success to fix a problem of their own making. They needed me now. How the tables had turned. I thought about what to do for a whole day. The old Emma would have wrestled with guilt, tempted by the chance to finally have them back in her life. But the new Emma, the CEO, the woman who had built a company from the ashes of her own heartbreak, knew better. I picked up my phone and called the reservation line for my own restaurant. "Hi," I said to the host. "I'd like to make a note on the reservation system. For the names Mabel and Frederick, please flag them." The host was quiet for a moment. "What should the note say, Ms. Emma?" I looked out the window of my new corner office at the sprawling city below. My city, my future. "The note should say," I began, my voice clear and steady, "that we are permanently, fully booked." I hung up the phone. I didn't feel vengeful or triumphant. I just felt free. My revenge wasn't a loud confrontation or a bitter parting shot. It was the quiet, undeniable hum of my own success. It was the full tables in my restaurants, the happy chatter of my customers, the loyalty of my team, and the peaceful, silent space where my family's drama used to be. They were still out there, stuck in their world of poker games and petty jealousies. But I was here, in the world I had built. And in this world, there were no empty tables.